Anti-aircraft gun on full alert. The situation is under control. Enemy aircraft incoming! Anti-aircraft gun on full alert. Enemy aircraft incoming! And if they won't fight us, we cannot do more.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. It's really getting hard to keep up with all the new ships that are coming out. So, today we are having a look at the brand new Tier 8 British Premium Heavy Cruiser, the Cheshire. Now, the Cheshire didn't exist. She didn't even exist on paper as far as I could tell. The only thing that I could find about the Cheshire, the only heavy cruisers that the British built, to my knowledge, were in the end were the York class, and I think the London class before that. But the one thing that I could find from the Cheshire were the main guns. The Cheshire's main guns are 234 millimeter, 50 caliber length Mark 12 guns. Now there is a ship that had these guns. Kinda. That was the Minotaur. No, not the actual Minotaur that we're seeing, nor the in the game, nor the Minotaur that happened before that. Because, you know, the British, they will not make it easy with naming ships because they keep reusing them. No, we're talking about an armored cruiser called Minotaur, which was built just short after the turn of the century. And she had the Mark 12 guns. Now, there is a ship, or there was a ship, that had the Mark 12 guns in twin turrets. And that was HMS Glutton. Now, HMS Glutton was, these were not Mark 12s, these were Mark 11s, sorry, on the Glutton. But they were the same caliber. And the Glutton was supposed to be a coastal defense ship that the British were building for the Norwegians. But then war happened, and the British figured we're going to need all the ships we can get. So they refunded the Norwegians, said, sorry mate, you can't have it, we need it, and renamed it HMS Glutton. Now, the Glutton, once she was completed, was sailing over to Dover, which, you know, generally is rather an important place for the British when it comes to dealing with continental invasions and such things. And she caught fire. More precisely, her secondary ammunition storage caught fire. So the captain was actually not on board at the time. He was taking a stroll along the cliffs of Dover with the admiral or vice admiral, and when they heard that something went up in flames, they ran back. Now, unfortunately, they had the Glutton parked right in front of an ammunition ship, which meant that, given that she was now on fire and pretty much all the officers were dead, they decided to flood the main magazines, because these were only the secondary magazines that were currently on fire. They did manage to do that on the forward magazines. They didn't quite manage to do that on the rear magazines because, well, things were on fire. So the problem was, if the rear magazines went up in flames, given how close the ammunition ship was, that thing would have probably gone up in flames as well. And that explosion would have probably leveled half of Dover, which they kind of tried to avoid. So the Vice Admiral got himself onto the Cossack. No, not the Tier 8 destroyer, the other Cossack. much earlier tribal class destroyer. So they were trying to torpedo the Glutton, figuring that if they could sink her, or at least put enough water into her that it would flood the engine room, not the engine room, the magazine storage, without actually blowing the whole thing up, then they would have succeeded. Now, the problem was, as the British had, modified the Glutton from being a Norwegian coastal defense ship to something the British could actually use, they had put the world's largest torpedo bulges on this thing. So the Cossack, being a tribal class destroyer, had relatively small caliber torpedoes and couldn't get through these. Because they obviously couldn't torpedo her into the magazine storage underneath the turrets, because then that would have defeated the purpose. So they gave that up, switched to a different destroyer that had larger torpedoes, and torpedoed her again at the same place where the Cossack had already tried to get through the torpedo bulge, and actually succeeded in getting her to capsize, and thus put the fire out. So I'd say as fire extinguishing missions go, this is probably on par with what the Soviets did with some unoutputtable oil fires. They nuked them. So this little rabbit hole and gem of a story I came across when I was actually trying to find anything about the Cheshire. Now, some of these 9.5-inch or 234mm guns were actually put in storage, and they were considered to be used in World War II, but more for like river monitors and things like that, not in actual heavy cruisers. So what do we have here then? Well, we have a heavy cruiser at Tier 8. We were going to have to compare her to the Edinburgh, really, in order to... because that's kind of the logical check here. Now, the first thing you'll notice when we compare her to the Edinburgh is how much bigger that thing is. I mean, this is huge. So this is a big ship. She does get more hit points than the Edinburgh. So about 4,000 and a cookie, 4,500 or so more than the Edinburgh. Armor-wise, she looks very comparable. Now, if you've played British light cruisers, you're aware of how squishy these are. But there is a gimmick to this, and we'll get to that. She is decidedly not as maneuverable as the Edinburgh, so I've put the same setup in there, just for comparison's sake. So she does not accelerate as quickly, and her steering doesn't turn as quickly, but she's by no means super sluggish if you set her up like that. The guns, this is where it gets interesting. Now, the Edinburgh has 1,250mm guns, and given that she's a British light cruiser, she can't fire high explosives, so no setting fires for you. Which makes dealing with battleships alone in the Edinburgh always a little bit difficult. But now the Cheshire has 234mm guns, and I don't think I've ever seen this caliber in any other ship. I mean, it's kind of probably, except for some of the higher Soviets. Let's see what the caliber on these things were, like the Donskoy or something. I'm not sure what these had. Dmitry Donskoy, what does she get? She gets 180s. Then it was the Moskva that got something similar. 220s on the Moskva? Yeah, 220s on the Moskva. So technically she has a larger caliber than the Moskva. Well, in practice, first of all, she only gets 6 guns, 2 super firing turrets forward and 1 aft. And like I mentioned, these are very old guns. Now, they have an okay range, very comparable to what you get on the 150s from the Edinburgh. They do, on paper at least, a lot of damage. So they have good high explosive and good armor-piercing shells. But again, you only get 6 of them. One thing that is odd, that strikes me as really odd, is that the citadel damage from the armor-piercing is only at 150%. Usually on heavy cruisers, so 200mm and above, you get 200%. And then 250 on the battleships or 300 on the really large caliber battleships. But she gets 150mm citadel damage modifiers. These guns are not extremely punchy on the armor piercing. So scoring citadels, you're going to have to be point blank shooting at the broadside of a light cruiser to get anything done with citadels. Most of the time, you actually find yourself firing higher explosive in these guns. And you'd say, well, okay, you're not going to do a huge amount of damage. No, but the fire chance of 11% is relatively decent. The reload of 10 seconds is Not super quick, but it's where the armor piercing shines, funnily enough, is against destroyers. So, and given that the penetration peters off so quickly over range, even at I don't know, like 4 or 5 kilometers, you're going to do full penetration against destroyers with these armor piercing shells. So only when you're at point blank range with destroyers, you do need to switch over to the high explosive. That makes her surprisingly efficient in dealing with destroyers for a heavy cruiser. But then again, you only get 6 guns. So that's a bit of a really strange kind of setup. She does get the Edinburgh torpedoes, pretty much exactly the Edinburgh torpedoes, even though they get a slightly different designation, but they've got the same reload, they've got the same damage, everything else is the same, 7.5 kilometer range. So these are the Edinburgh torpedoes. The other thing that the ship is very, very good at is AA defense. I mean, she does have a good range on the small caliber AA and some pretty respectable damage numbers. Plus, we'll go look at the ship skills in a minute. Surface detection wise, given how large this thing is, she actually gets a better base surface detection than the Edinburgh. Okay, I'll take it. But yeah, if we look at the ship skills, she gets smokes, she gets AA defense alert 2, and she gets a hydro. Whereas we're looking at the Edinburgh gets smokes and AA defense. So 2 smokes, better smokes, but 2 smokes, worse AA defense. Also 2 of those, whereas the Cheshire has smokes once, but 3 of them, and then return better AA defense and also 3 of them. Plus, given that she's got a hydro, we can use a captain skill to actually bump that up even further. This ship has a surprisingly large amount of utility. She can tank. How can you tank in a British cruiser, even if it's a heavy cruiser? Well, the heavy anyway refers to the guns. Well, I remember that gimmick I told you about before. So she does get the single-fire torpedoes, as you get on the Edinburgh and all the other British cruisers. But she also gets an additional repair kit. This ship has 4 repair kits. This means that first of all, if you build her for that, she can tank not with her armor, but with her hit points. And given the gun layout, you get 2/3 of your firepower forward anyways. So most of the time, you'll find yourself bow in towards the enemy and doing the tanking thing. So she is surprisingly survivable, and you can trade a lot of hit points in order to deal with positions. You can take positions and hold positions in the ship that you can't easily do in the Edinburgh. So there is some sense to this thing. And again, if you're up against carriers, it's relatively easy to get the clear skies in the ship because you do have a fairly respectable AA. Now, how have I set her up? I have put actually the precision mod in first slot. You could go with turret traverse because it's like just below American heavy cruiser in terms of rotation. You could do that. You could do the main battery reload to get just that half second faster reload. But I've actually gone with the dispersion mod because you only get 4 shots and you really want them to be on target if you can. The other 2 I've put into steering because she was a little bit sluggish on the rudder, and you find yourself quite a fair bit in reverse, dodging shells and tanking. So you could as well go with a propulsion mod in the second slot because also the propulsion is not as good as on the Edinburgh. But I find this ship to be a little bit of a brawler because of the smokes and because of the, should I say, interesting setup with the additional repair kit. Have we not looked at cruiser modernization as elite? You can. Main battery traverse is valid as well. I wanted more hit points, and since she's got a very good AA already, that buff is nice as well. Plus, you get a bit of main battery traverse to begin with. The commander skills. So, given that you get 4 repair kits, you really want to build the commander for abusing that that particularity as much as you can. So, I've got underwater protection in 1. I've got the battlefield support in 2 because we have both AA and hydro. So she gets an additional charge on each of those. The artillery maintenance for early gaming, and the area defense expert, obviously. Now you definitely want to get Survivalist because again you have 4 repair kits, which means you get 4 times an additional bonus. And you most definitely want the fully prepared because you have 4 repair kits. So as soon as you get them, off cooldown, you can trade a lot of hit points. Mistweaver obviously being a thing as well. I found that this ship is not so much about the guns. I mean, the guns are okay, but you're not going to do huge amounts of damage in this ship. She's more about the utility, really, and just being difficult to sink. And this kind of plays into the little historical anecdote that I had here. It actually, if you play her right, it can take the enemy team quite a bit of shooting to sink you, which means they're not shooting at anyone else. So it's an interesting role she finds herself in. The historical camo, if you would want to put that, gives you main battery firing range and torpedo range, which is good. She gives you better max traverse, which is good, and even better service detection, which is also good. So all around good things on this. Let's play a battle. I've played a fair few because this is a ship that I somehow enjoy, even though I'm not super successful in her, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. But she has enough of a utility in most cases that I can play her very aggressively and have fun, even though I just end up doing like 40,000 points of damage in the end. So, but let's get into a battle. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And here we are. Well, it's a tier 8 game, really. We've got 1 tier 7, and I think the enemy team has 1 tier 7. We're up against North Carolina, Bismarck, Mogami, Kutuzov, Kagro, and Lightning. So, playing Cage. In an Edinburgh or any other British cruiser, you probably wouldn't want to get into the Cup Circle, at least not that easily. With this thing, you definitely can. Because, again, you do have a large amount of firepower concentrated forwards. And you have four repair kits, so you do have technically a bit more health to go with. So where am I going to head? I'm probably going to head towards we're spawning on the northern end, pretty much. So I'm going to head towards the island over there, and then we'll see what we can do. Two destroyers in the enemy team. So you do want to leave it at the armor piercing if you want to go up against destroyers. Everything else, at least at range, you're often better off firing the high explosive. So unless you're really, really close range and you're shooting at enemy cruisers, then you can use the armor piercing. But even if you score citadels, it's not a huge amount of bonus. So, let's go and see if we can cap. No one's capping yet. 2 destroyers on the enemy team. Where are they? I mean, we are almost at the capture circle at this point. Okay, now they're starting to cap. So, all right. So we'll position ourselves next to this little island here, and then put the guns forwards, and see what's coming around for us to shoot at. Okay, there's Mogami. Now this is what I'm talking about. I'm firing the armor piercing here. And again, just to see what's happening, we're firing at about 8 kilometers, and we only get semi-pens. So we're not even getting full pens against a broadsiding Mogami at a range of 8 to 9 kilometers. So it's better to switch over to the HE. Okay, there's Kutuzov. Now we do need to watch out with the Kutuzov, because the Kutuzov sets fires. Exactly, there it goes. Now single fire we don't need to damage con, but it sits broadside on. You'd think something as squishy as the Kutuzov you could penetrate with these guns, but not really. They are really not punchy at all. Okay, now we do need to dodge a couple of these torps. There comes the lightning. Now this range it would have been better to use armor piercing again, so we'll switch back to the armor piercing. And just sitting here baiting the lightning, hydro up. So if he is getting torpedoes away, where are you? Come out. The smoke's almost gone. It's just a fuel smoke. Okay, in the meantime, I'm gonna shoot at the New Orleans here. You really need to do at like 4 kilometer range or so to do anything reasonable with the armor piercing. Oh, there comes the lightning. Okay, there come the lightning's torpedoes. Okay, lightning's running away. These torpedoes are never going to hit, and that bot New Orleans is going to be dead. There we go. Okay, that's the one bot taken care of. So the 2 bots have died. Now we can actually start the game. We are kind of still holding on to the cap circle, just about. Okay, North Carolina. We do want to switch back to the high explosive again because our armor piercing isn't going to do a great deal of things. And you see, I think he's turning away. So This is turning out to be a rather scrappy battle at this point. Oh, okay, there's the lightning. So high explosive at this range against the lightning is the right choice. Now lightning, where are you going? There's also Kagero, so there are probably torps in the water. My Hydra is off cooldown in case he comes around this way. But I mean, I'd assume that the lightning isn't going to be in rushing a cruiser. I mean, I don't know if they know that this thing isn't that great because she doesn't have the 150 millimeters and then they say, oh no, he's coming around. Oh, look at that. Okay, lightning's brave. That means we're going to take a couple of torps, but we can survive that because we're just on just one kit down. That's one or two more maybe. Okay, control the flood. And just heal the ship and get a couple shots in it. Lightning in the meantime. Well, okay. But we're holding the cap and the lightning doesn't get anything done. Yeah, you don't need to Hydra me, but at this range I should be out of your Hydra range anyway, so I can smoke up. And smoke up our DD here as well, since we're at it, and we can all shoot at the lightning. Now, the 6 kilometers, you kind of want to switch back to the armor piercing again. And because that's where kind of the sweet spot is. But the high explosive does a very reasonable amount of damage as well. Now, I really thought at this moment that the Bismarck was in front of the island and not behind. So I'm actually dropping too close. I thought he was sailing in front of the island. Actually, he sails behind the island. So these torps are going to just hit into the island. But we're holding the cap. We're one ship down at this stage, and I do have to wait for my repair kit to come off cooldown. Now, back to the high explosive. We have a North Carolina to shoot at. I'm actually not spotted, even though my front turrets are poking out around the island. The reason for that is and I have to make a little bit more of a detail about this, is the spotting mechanic, because the spotting comes from the highest point in your ship. So now I'm spotted because now the highest point in my ship's poking out around the island. So I do have to back off a little bit and see if I can set another fire on the North Carolina. And I should be going on spotted again any second. There we go. So North Carolina, Kutuzov, and Kagero. We're still one ship behind. Yeah, I'm a little busy. I'm not so afraid of Kagero. I'm more afraid of that North Carolina over there. I'm gonna see if I can drop some torpedoes into him. Let's smoke up here, poke up a little bit forward. Okay, never mind, he's dead. Alright, there comes the lightning again. Okay, revenge. So yeah, at this range again. Oh, you're smoking up. I have hydro. And I know you do, but you're not dead. So, okay, now the Bismarck's poking out, so we can send some more torpedoes this way. And there come the lightning torpedoes, so we do need to back off from the whole thing here. And let's see if we can set the Bismarck on fire. But it looks like we can't. Okay, Kagero is outside the capture circle, so it's not of interest to me at any moment. Okay, there should be a couple of hits on the Bismarck, because he saw my one torpedo sailing by. Figured, torpedoes dodged. No, you haven't. There's some more coming. I wish I had more torps, but that's a common problem on the mid-tier British cruisers. Okay, so Bismarck's on fire. The Kutuzov's pushing, and the Bismarck's shooting at me. That's unfortunate. I do still have one more repair kit. But I do need to back out from here and see if okay, Bismarck I'm probably going to have to angle against once the Kutuzov's fired. A couple more shots out and then we'll see if we can angle against the Bismarck and get some torpedoes away against the Kutuzov. Okay, that's a one perma-fire on the Bismarck. Let's drop some torpedoes in his direction in case he stops there. Okay, heal, yep. This is fine. But you see, she is reasonably sturdy if you're going nose in. Okay, something's smoking up there. I'm just going to try to set another fire on the Bismarck. But I am probably going to be dead because either the Bismarck or the Kutuzov is going to kill me. Which means Cleveland, you're the only... Okay, we're way ahead on points because we've been holding the capture circle for so long. So Cleveland, if you could just survive for 15 more seconds. I'm going to try and kill the Bismarck in the meantime. Okay, Kutuzov gets me, but do I get... Yes, I get the Bismarck. And Cleveland, could you please just not die in the next 4 seconds? And then we'll win on points because we've been holding the capture circle for this long. So I've been sitting in the middle of it and tanking everything I could. Okay. Yeah. This is a very strange ship. The guns are okay. They're not super powerful, I feel, for tier 8. The torpedoes are, well, the same stuff you'd get on the Edinburgh. But it's the utility. You can tank positions in this thing as if you were a battleship at some point because you have the additional heal and you've got a relatively decent hit point pool. And if you bow in, the armor actually holds up. you can you can do AA defense to devastating effects. You have 3 smoke charges rather than 2 on the Edinburgh. So you can actually play her a little bit more like say a Mino in that regard, and be more aggressive and use your smoke to get into positions. So I'm having fun in this ship. It's not a great tier 8 premium, but she's kind of fun to play, and she honestly almost reminds me a little bit of the Cleveland, in kind of in a way that I can play her, such that you do have a fair amount of utility to be useful for your team, and to just tank or to just smoke up and hold positions, or set fires and get some torpedoes away, or just shoot some aircraft down. It's that sort of gameplay, if you know what I mean, like relatively aggressive, useful to the team, not always the highest damage dealer. With Cleveland, you'd probably have to hang back a little bit more than with this thing, but you can actually get into capture circles with this, and you can deal with destroyers with this thing. So it's a fun ship for me. In general, you probably really have to get used to her quirks if you want to be successful in this thing. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye.